How are you doing? This is Dave Outdoor Scotland.
Oi, oi! That's my line. Hey folks, how you doing? The stay home regulation has been lifted, so we're good to go. I've got some overnight gear. We're going up into the hills for a night. So let's get these rucksacks shouldered, get up the hill, get rid of some of her energy.
Let's go.
folks, we had a bit of lunch up there and I did a little piece to camera, but it was super windy, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to cut that dialogue into the video for you. Basically what I was saying up there was it's a lovely spot quite high in the glen for camping. However, when we were sitting having a wee spot of lunch, we realised just how windy it was, and quite keen on putting a wee bit of dialogue into this video for you. Maybe share with you some of the plans for later in the year now that we're in kind of stage 1 of being released. So we decided to shoulder the packs and we've come down the glen a fair bit. We're going to camp beside this burn, and it's not the best camping spot that we've ever had, but it's pretty sheltered.
It's not the worst.
And it's certainly not the worst, that's for sure, yeah. So let's get these rucksacks off. We'll get the tent set up. We've got enough water here for a bath, folks. I'm not very keen on drinking the water in these hills where there's so many animals. I do have my filter with me and we could probably filter and boil it and make it safe enough, but it's not a massive hike, so I'm carrying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 litres, 5.5 kilos of water today. No standing in behind you, they're laughing at me. Anyhow. The thing I like about freestanding tents, folks, is that you can actually erect the tent, you can put it up and then you can move it around on the ground to get the most level pitch to give you a reasonably comfortable night. So that's what I'm going to do. growing back a wee bit of vegetation here, folks, because we're going to have a wee twig fire tonight for a bit of company. Mo's busy picking worms out to make sure that no worms are harmed in the making of this movie.
I didn't hear the dogs, I hear the dog whistles.
He's away up there, I didn't know.
It's on the ridge.
I've been doing a bit of foraging, folks. Want to have a wee twig fire tonight, so I managed to get some dead birch brash from underneath these birch trees here, but it's been lying on the ground for a while, so it's a bit damp. But I went a little bit further afield and had a walk through the glen, and I got this. It's been dead for a wee while and dry as a bone, so I'll get a wee bit of a fire going tonight, a wee bit of company, and we'll have a blether by the fire. So let me get this processed up, and then we'll see if Mo's finished reading her book. She's in the tent behind you there. Maybe we get a bit of cooking on the go. That's pretty dry, that'll burn easily. Just enjoying a wee cup of tea here, folks, and then we're going to get this fire on the go. Do a bit of cooking, getting quite hungry actually. Nearly 5 o'clock, so we'll get the fire on the go and then we'll let it burn down a little bit, get some embers. What's on the menu tonight, Mo?
Do you really want to say it out loud?
I know what it is. It's pasta with a tomato sauce and a big pan full of vegetables. So we can cook the pasta in my fancy titanium pot there. I don't really want to put that on the fire, but I've got a wee pan that I can put on the fire, and I can certainly boil up the water. So we need a visit to the outdoor shop to get some more gas. We've got about half a dozen canisters with us, and they've all got just some dregs in the bottom. A few bugs around as well. You get a bit of smoke on this from this fire. Chase them away. ready, do you think? Do you want me to
Could be.
put
I
a,
can eat it.
do you want me to put a wee touch of water in?
Yeah, if you want to cook it longer, you need to put water in. Yeah.
Bit more?
Yeah, that's fine. Enough. Don't let it dry down. That's good.
There you go. Absolutely amazing, folks. Delicious. So good to be back out again. There's a bit of mushrooms for you. We'll get that perfectly done. You're worried about me eating all the veg and Mo working away there on the pasta. We do have another portion. Let me show the folks the pasta. Can you see that? I don't really tip it up too much. That's a fine portion of pasta with 2 types of tomato sauce. I've got to watch playing around with the fire with these gloves on. They're leather gloves, so they're okay for picking up burning embers and so on, but there's a hole in the finger. You know, a simple plate of pasta with some nice tomato sauce is always delicious. But it's so much better when it's cooked out here. Going to get all romantic now, Mo, with the bubbling brook.
Pasta with a simple tomato sauce is barely acceptable, but it's okay in this setting.
I'm just going to shut up now, folks. Try to be romantic
With pasta?
with pasta. Well, that was a grand meal, folks. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Well done, Mo. Thank you. We're just going to sit here by the fire, chill out for a wee while, enjoy a cup of tea, but let me tell you a story. We're going back a bit now. In 1990 I was on a big expedition, a long, tough expedition. We had a lot of bad weather, and actually because of the wet weather we suffered badly with leeches. And so we were pretty mucky, especially if you get a leech bite at night when you're in your sleeping bag, and they have an anticoagulant in their mouth parts, so once they bite and they stop feeding they drop off, but then you keep bleeding and you're bleeding into your sleeping bag, so basically your clothes are pretty horrible and your sleeping bag's pretty horrible. So anyway, we were winding our way through the hills of northwest Yunnan, some big mountains, but we barely got a glimpse of them because of the low cloud, but every now and again we'd get a wee glimpse through the clouds. There's a big goose just flying over there.
A lone goose.
A lone goose.
His name is David.
So where was I, folks? We were in northwest Yunnan. We were going through the mountains, and every now and again we get a glimpse of these big mountains with their snow-capped peaks and great limestone cliffs and terraces. But like I say, we were kind of trapped by the weather a bit. We were pretty mucky, we were pretty tired, pretty hungry at times too. But we got to a little village as it was then. It's a reasonable sized town now. A place called Zhongdian. In Chinese, Zhong means middle. So actually the Chinese name for China is Zhongguo, Middle Kingdom. And Zhongdian means middle plain. So it was this high plateau below the ramparts of the Himalayas. And we stayed in a forest cabin there, a workstation for some of the forestry workers, a kind of basic place, but actually a lovely place in some ways. Anyway, they had this big silo thing full of water with a fire underneath it, so you could get hot water. We had been on the go through the hills camping and living rough for months, and I'd had a duke in the burn now and again, but boy, it was cold. So the thought of having a hot bath. So I went over to check out this silo, and I noticed that there was a building in behind it, and in behind it there was a bath. Now I wouldn't actually call it a bathroom because the room only had 2 walls. It was completely open to the to the mountains on 2 sides.
Is it 2 walls like that? Or 2 walls like that?
It was L-shaped. So, and the bath was tucked into the L-shaped bit. The bath was full of wood. So I took all the wood out and I fired it all into the silo, and I got this massive fire roaring in the silo. And I got it must have been hundreds of gallons of water in it. I could see the steam coming out the top of it. I got a bit of hose pipe and I took about 40 or 50 gallons out of this silo into the bath. The first couple of gallons I used to wash out the bath, and then I filled it up. It was just on a mud floor. But there was a wee table, so I stripped off standing on the table and I jumped from the table into the bath, and I was sitting there and I was all lathered up. I was like, I was just the king of the world. But then there was a commotion, and round the corner of these 2 walls this girl's head appeared, followed by older girls going up this like line of heads, looking at me, pointing at this white foreign skinny malink in the bath, washing my hands and face and hair. And anyhow, there was great merriment until the matriarch, and it is a matriarch, it's a matriarchal society in that area, isn't it, Mo?
Well, a part of that. Yeah, yes. Still is.
So the matriarch came in, and she was not happy at all that I'd used up all the wood and I was using up all the hot water. Complete indulgence, having a wash.
Yeah.
It must have been October time, and it was bitterly cold. But boy, did I feel good after it. So that was my bath with a view, looking out to the mountains. Sorry about the smoke, folks. I've got some dry wood here, but I'm saving it for later. I'm going to get a fire going after dark, just for a wee bit company before I climb into my sleeping bag. I've got a feeling you might be in your sleeping bag before then.
I'm gonna aim for a 12-hour sleep tonight.
You having a bath before you get into your sleeping bag?
You know your L-shaped wall.
My L-shaped wall, yeah. Boy, that was a tough trip. That's what you call secondary happiness. It was absolute misery during that expedition, but when we got home and then looked back on it, and I can still look back with fondness at some of the memories from that early expedition.
Did you see those girls after your dress?
Yeah, because they were the station that we were living in was also home to quite a lot of people, and so these girls lived there. That was their home.
Was
So-
it awkward?
No, it wasn't awkward at all. I was sitting in a big old-fashioned bath. The only bit that they could see was,
You don't know what they could see.
I'm sure. All modesty was preserved. The only difficulty thereafter was dealing with the old lady that wasn't very happy about me burning all the wood.
Was water precious there?
No, there's plenty water source there.
Well, in some parts of Tibet, they only wash 3 times in lifetime.
Yeah, that's right.
Birth, marriage, death.
Yeah. So there's actually only 2 that you know about.
One is probably.
Yeah, aye, actually.
You don't know
yeah.
the first and the last. It's not done by other people.
Let me liven this fire up a wee bit, get rid of this smoke. You warming your tootsies there, Mo?
Don't say that word.
What's that? Oh, Peely Wally. She's got Peely Wally legs. I'll give you another wee story, folks, before I go to my bed. Mo's laughing. This is not a funny story. This is well, it's an interesting story, but I think it's interesting. I spent a lot of my life in the Sino-Himalaya, the Chinese Himalaya, exploring a mountain massif known as the Yulong Shueshan in Chinese, or in English, it's the Jade Dragon Snow Mountain. Do you know the name of it in Nashihua? In the local language they call it Moli.
Mori.
Yeah. So
The stars.
I explored that mountain massif is roughly about the size of central Scotland, I suppose. It's about maybe 50-60 miles from south to north, and at the widest part it's probably about 30 miles wide. When you see it from the Yangtze drainage, from the Yangtze Basin, looking across the river, it's like a great sawtooth of limestone with about 14 individual peaks on it. But in fact there are many more than 14 peaks, because when you're looking at it in profile, you can't see the depth, you can't see what's in behind some of the peaks that are visible immediately above the river, if that makes sense. So it's also riven by some big gorges, and there was a particular gorge that I was keen on exploring. However, the locals regarded it as a particularly dangerous place, and they said, you know, nobody goes in there, prone to flash flooding. Anyway, after many years of kind of tinkering around the edges of it and dropping down into it a little way and trying to get a feel for the place, I decided this late spring day that it was time enough to go down and have a wee look. I particularly wanted to do my exploration in the springtime before the summer rains. So the snow melt had gone and the water levels were low, and I thought, this is the time. So anyway, I packed some gear and climbed up and decided to go in from the very top and then work my way down through this gorge to exit very close to the Yangtze River, in fact. So it took 2 or 3 days to get up onto the high ground, camping as I went. And then on the final day of my ascent, I camped at the highest point on the very lip of this great gorge, looking down into the darkness, and I thought, right, tomorrow. So in the morning I was up and away early, wound my way down through this gorge and had an amazing day, but it was getting quite late, so time to make camp really. I had a glorious camp in a spot that this wee valley reminds me of that spot, because I was next to the river, but instead of having a slope behind me, I had some birch woodland, just the same as I have here, but on more or less vertical rock with little terraces. So the birch trees were growing in the cracks and crevices in this kind of rock wall. And I remember having a wee fire and brewing up, and I was travelling very, very light. Following morning I was up and away, and then within a couple of hours I come to a waterfall. Quite a step. But there was plenty good belay points, so I set up a belay. I had a short length of rope with me, wee harness, and I abseiled down. And then when I got to the bottom, I made a bit of a pig's ear of the abseil, if I'm being absolutely honest, folk, and I ended up swinging under the waterfall, so I got pretty wet. Anyhow, it wasn't cold, wasn't particularly worried about it. So I got down, and then I was standing looking, and the big decision, do I pull the rope down and leave myself potentially cut off if I can't get all the way out of the gorge? I had a good look and I thought I can climb back up there if I have to. So I pulled the rope down, I carried on, and I was inching along little ledges, and I was making good progress, and I got, I don't know, probably somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the way down through the gorge, and I could see light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. But I came across or upon another waterfall and a bigger step, and I thought, well, I've got enough rope, I can abseil down there, but I don't think I'll be able to climb back up that one. And I was sitting there for ages looking down, and the only place to set up a belay was on the wrong side of the burn, or the river, if you see what I mean. So the river went across, dropped down, not huge distance, maybe about 6 or 7 meters, maybe a wee bit more than that. But then the river went into a very narrow channel, and I was going to have to abseil down the wrong side. To get out of that gorge, I knew that I would have to cross the river and then go down the other side. I was looking down and I thought, that channel's quite narrow, can I jump that river? And I thought, well, if I can't, I'm kind of stuck. To let you know, the water was way too fast moving for me to think about wading through it. I'd have got swept away for sure. So I sat and I deliberated, and in the end, I think common sense prevailed and I abandoned all thought of going down. So near and yet so far. So quite late in the day, I went back up and I found actually a good place to camp underneath the first waterfall, the second on the way back. But I was worried that the water levels might rise, and I was also slightly apprehensive about my ability to climb up that waterfall again, so I thought I'm going to do that. So I climbed up, and more or less dark when I got up to the top of it, and I searched about, found a place to camp underneath a big boulder. I had some fire lighting equipment with me. I managed to get a little bit of wood just as we have done here, got a fire going. Just had a wee bivvy tent with me, and I didn't have very much food. I had loads of coffee and I had loads of biscuits. So it was kind of meagre rations, but what a glorious night I had. Trapped between the two walls of this narrow gorge, and it was all birch on one side, pure stand, just birch trees, nothing else. And then on the other side, it was all rowan trees. And they were obviously habitat specific. The rowans didn't cross over onto the birch side, and the birch didn't cross over onto the rowans. So had a lovely night there, but contemplating the next couple of days, because I knew I was pretty far down that gorge, and it was a lot harder going uphill than it was going down. I had to go up to almost 5,000 metres to get out of that gorge, and then I had to wind my way around and back down on a easier route. So when I was sitting at the bottom of at the top of that, I'm getting confused with my waterfalls, Mo. And I was sitting at the top of that.
Are you still with us?
Are you still with us? Yeah. I was sitting at the top of that second waterfall, debating whether to abseil over it or not. I knew that I was potentially only hours away from easy terrain, and thereafter I would have come across a village, I'm sure. But going back, I knew that it put me probably the best part of a week away from habitation. So it was quite a long time living on my coffee and biscuits before I eventually wound round and got back down. I went to the E village. You've been there? There.
Did I understand the word?
Yeah, the E people, they're white E. They speak a Tibetan dialect, of which I have a little, but not as much as I should have. It's quite a complex language. Do you remember the greeting with the tongue out? Remember? You don't remember that? That's they putting their tongue out. It's like that.
I remember.
You remember? Yeah. So it's a sign of friendship. There's a family there that I lived with on and off over a period of about 15 years. The fire just collapsed. In a tiny wee farmhouse. So we put another log on. Almost bedtime. Two more. So eventually I wound my way back round, and I got down to the village, the E village. There are actually 4 villages, and in Chinese they're not very romantically named. It's Yisun E, Yisun Er, Yisun San.
Yisun E, Yisun R, Yisun San.
Yeah. So E village 1, E village 2, E village 3, E village 4. It was grand to get back and get some rice and vegetables, get a billet for the night, recover. I did actually go through that gorge several years later, after a very prolonged hot dry spell, and both the abseils were done easily. There was no water, a tiny wee burn to just enough water for a bit of drinking water. Milky white because it's coming down glacial water. You be careful drinking that, it's so mineral rich, not good for you. So there you go, folks. Tales from the past. Exploits in the Himalaya. One of the dangers in that gorge was it was so deep in the gorge where there wasn't much sunlight. There was the two opposing flanks. The flank that got a little bit of light filtering down, that had the birch trees, and then the shadier side, interestingly, had the rowan trees. But above these walls on the flanks that poured across from the high ground, there was fir trees, big fir trees. And every now and again the locals would harvest a few. They used them as structural members for their houses. But the way that they did it to get them down from that high altitude was they felled a few of these trees and let them go over, tumble down into the gorge, and then there was a hope that during the flash floods that went through there every so often that it would wash them down, and apparently it worked. Although during my mini expedition down through the gorge I did come across quite a few fir trees that had obviously been tumbled in from above and hadn't made it out, so I'm not sure how successful that procedure or process was. You getting warmed up before you go to your bed there?
Front and back.
It's going to be cold tonight, folks. It was a hard frost this morning. It'll be frosty tonight as well, I think. Well, it's forecast, but it looks pretty cloudy up there just now. What do you think, Mo? Are we going to get a frost?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either, actually, but it's forecast. Well, folks, I think we're going to call it a night. I'm going to sit here for a wee while, let this burn down, and then into the sleeping bags. You must have read most of your book. Have you finished it? Finished one of them? Actually, I know the answer to that. I asked her if she'd finished her book and did she enjoy it. It was a great anticlimax because it turns out that it's the first part of a trilogy, so she's no idea how it really ended. I've got a book in my rucksack as well, and we've got some tunes, so we'll sit till the fire dies a little bit, make sure it's safe, and then we'll climb into our sleeping bags, listen to some tunes, read for a wee while, and then we'll get an early night. So we'll get back to you in the morning, folks. Stay tuned, a little bit more of the adventure to unfold.
Oh, really? Just porridge.
Yeah, just porridge in the morning.
And get out of here.
Yeah, you might just want to close the video down now.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Stay tuned, folks. More adventure to come. Don't listen to her. Try to take over my channel. What was that about this morning?
What did I do?
Alright, folks, enough shenanigans. We'll get back to you in the morning. Good night for now. Morning, folks. It was a glorious morning. It was a hard frost. The frost is just beginning to lift now. Mo's been lying in her sleeping bag, reading, enjoying the warmth of the sunshine. Blue skies this morning, not a cloud in sight. I don't know what the temperature dropped to in the night, but it was pretty cold. Are you warm enough, Mo? Yep. So, we're going to get some porridge on the go. Belly's empty. Need some sustenance, and then we have to break camp and get out of here. We'll keep the cameras rolling for a wee while, folks. Let you enjoy this glorious day. It's grand to be back out in the tent again. You see me through the trees there, folks. The geese have become a real part of the character of our move to this neighbourhood. So we live close to a bay with a big nature reserve where the geese overwinter, but when I'm walking the woodlands, they're flying overhead and even camping here in the nearby hills. I've just landed up there in a patch of grass on the edge of the heather. Anyhow, better get the coffee on the go. Everything you need.
Syrup? All of it?
Yeah, that would be nice. Maple syrup and porridge. No honey this morning.
Honey would be solid.
Yeah, the honey would have froze overnight for sure.
Oh, that's all of it. That's going to be a super sweet porridge.
We're going to be running up over that hill in a wee while. sun's still quite low in the sky, so I'm end up with a tripod shot. Just tuck this in behind this tree, I'll leave it for somebody else. The stones can all go back in the burn.
Want some help?
Yeah, why not? Spread them about a bit.
Like nothing ever happened.
That was warm work climbing up there, folks. I'm just going to wind the video up here, folks. We're not, we've got to go along this ridge and we're going to bag a wee summit before we head back, but I think this is probably the best time just to wind everything up, say thanks for viewing, thanks for sticking with the channel. We're in the first stage of release from lockdown, so Mo and I are hoping that we can get the wagon on the road and get out and about and get a few more adventures filmed for you. So stay safe, folks, take care, look forward to getting back to you on the next one. Bye for now.
Bye.